Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche and its owner stories again today. Owner stories number 28. That sounds like a lucky number, actually, but we're up to number 28. Today I have, who do I have today? I have Jeff coming in, and Jeff is going to join me very, very shortly from San Diego. And Jeff is experiencing his first Porsche. I don't know a lot about Jeff's story. I've seen his Instagram. We've chatted briefly through DMs on Instagram, and I really wanted to have him on because what I like about owners' stories is that, you know, we have all different types of owners, whether it be your first Porsche, your third Porsche, whether you have one, whether you have three. I like the variety. I like how everyone has a similar story, but a different story at the same time. And that's what owner stories was always all about. That was the way how I always saw it. Each Porsche tells a different story, and each owner has a story to tell, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we're talking about today, and that's what we talk about on each of these episodes of Owner Stories. So, if I sound a bit hyped, if I sound a bit odd today, I record these in advance. It's only 1 week in advance, actually. I've actually pretty much caught up, or it could be 2 weeks. I'm not actually sure. It could be 1 week. But I arrived back into London from Bahrain on Friday. For some reason, I'm not sleeping very well, so I'm a little bit wide, I'm a little bit tired, but I'm awake. I'm excited to do this one. I'm going to get Jeff now on the line because it's 5 o'clock here in London, and it's time to connect and time to chat about all things Porsche with Jeff from San Diego and his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories, number 28, with Jeff coming in from San Diego. Jeff's here. He's connected by Zoom. Hi, Jeff. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time out on your Sunday morning. Pretty early there in San Diego. It's only 9 a.m., isn't it?
It's 9 a.m. Yep, it's beautiful. It's like summer just started here. It's been mid 70s, high 70s past couple days.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, London's not too bad. It looks a bit dismal out the window there, but it's actually quite pleasant for London. It's actually not that cold, and it's not raining, so that's the main thing. So just so the listeners know, Jeff, like a lot of people that come on Owner Stories, reached out to me through Instagram. Always the best place to contact me, to get in touch if you want to be on one of the Owner Stories. So that's where you can get a hold of me. As I said in the intro, I'm not really talking well today. I'm still a bit tired. I haven't slept very well, so I'm going to get this back into line. So Jeff's here. So Jeff, I always like to start this podcast, and I always like to start it with the similar question or the same question. Is, when did you first start thinking about Porsche? When did you start thinking about buying a Porsche? When did you start first noticing them? Was it when you were a kid? Was it when you were a little bit older in life, a bit later in life? How did the Porsche bug start with you?
Yep. Yeah. For me, it was when I was a young kid. So I was always into cars. I had little Matchbox cars and Tonka trucks and all that. And we lived next door to a guy. My next door neighbor had a 76 Chevy Corvette, and I thought that was the coolest car. And a couple years later, he got a Plymouth Prowler, and I was like, oh man, this is awesome! All these cool cars he has. And I just always thought that the shape of the 911 and just Porsches in general was very neat, kind of iconic in how it looked. I didn't know much about cars at the time. I was 10 years old or so. And my first Porsche memory specifically actually kind of ties into the car I ended up with. I remember reading a car magazine when I was young and reading about Porsche coming out with the Boxster. It was, I always kind of thought, oh, Porsche, I don't know if I'll ever be able to afford one of these cars. People growing up, it's a third car, a fourth car. How will I ever be able to get this? And then Porsche was coming out with this cheaper, we call it an entry-level car. The article said to save the brand and all that. And I was like, oh man, this is designed to be a convertible. I always loved the look of a classic Roadster, kind of the two-seater convertible in a car specifically designed to be the Roadster. So that was kind of my first memory, was actually an article about a Porsche Boxster. And I said, all right, someday I'm going to be able to own and drive this car. That's going to be my goal. And then my grandfather, I was young again. I was probably, between 8, 10 years old at the time. he always used to joke with me. We'd drive by homes and he'd point out a house with a porch on it and say, "Oh, look, there's your porch. Maybe someday, you'll get a porch like that."
Yeah.
And then he wanted to be the one. Go ahead.
So it was more the Boxster that attracted you. It wasn't the 911. You always wanted the Boxster. You liked the shape of the Boxster better than the 911?
I liked the appeal of a convertible.
Okay.
And I love the shape of the 911. I think the 911 is an iconic car. At this time, I think the 993 was out. I'll be honest, I don't know that the 993 is my favorite iteration of the 911. So
right.
I think that kind of pushed me towards the Boxster. But yeah, I started off always wanting a convertible and loving the look and style of the 986 Boxster.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and I've always mentioned this before as well, but there is something about that Boxster that even when it first came out, it's the width of the rear, the side of the rear, the balance of it on that side view. And I noticed the picture on your Instagram, you've got a picture of the side view, and there is something so iconic about that, you know what I mean? And, the Boxster is, it's a Porsche, I keep saying 911, it's a Porsche that, is important. It's important in the range. It's been around for 25 years. It's not going away. It is very popular. And, even the podcasts I've had with, Stephen from Australia with his Boxster, those episodes are really, really popular. It shows you that the Boxster has a lot of personality. It has a lot of, it appeals to a lot of people for obvious reasons. It is, like you said, it's a roadster. It's not like the cab in the 911. It's a little bit, it's different, it's a different car altogether. So what cars before you got your Boxster, what sort of cars did you go through? Did you have anything that was a sports car, Jeff, or was everything just, like a daily car that you needed for work, etc.?
My first car was a Jeep Wrangler, so probably the complete opposite of a sports car. I love that car. It only had a soft top. I got rid of it for something more practical, and it was a Saab 9.3. That was a 2008 Saab 9.3.
Okay, nice car.
Yep. I always wanted kind of a sportier car, but I was also leaning towards a sedan for the practicality. So I was looking at the Saab 9.3, and then after that, I moved to an Audi A4 here in San Diego. That was my first car out here. The Saab actually caught on fire. There's a story to that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And when Saab, went out of existence, it became very difficult to find parts. So the insurance company just said, "That's it. It's totaled."
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to an Audi A4. I loved that car. It wasn't the Quattro, and this was 2010, so it had 220 horsepower. It wasn't anything crazy. I moved to New York City then and sold my car. Didn't need a car for a couple of years, and then moved back out to San Diego here in 2018. And I was looking specifically for a 2015 A3 Quattro. Okay. And I found that car in Connecticut, and I was driving that car for a while here in San Diego. And I mean, that's kind of, to me, was the perfect compromise of sedan, sporty, small. I've had a roof rack fit my surfboards. I have a 1-year-old son, so it was great for when he was born. I could fit the child seat in the back.
Okay, so you've got A3 is a great car. I had an A3. I had a 2000 A3 years ago. A3 Turbo. A3 is a great car. A4 is a good car. So you've got the A3, and then you start thinking, okay, I want something better. I want to get a Porsche. Is that how it came about? Was it a Porsche that first came into your mind then, that you wanted to change your A3 out, or was it something else?
So I've been looking for a Porsche, specifically a 986 Boxster, probably pretty seriously ever since I moved back to San Diego. So that would have been late 2018. I started looking, and probably like a lot of people who listen to this podcast, almost every day at some point I'm looking on Auto Trader. I would look on Craigslist, just kind of following the prices, seeing what's out there, and always having that internal debate like, oh, this car available in Florida, how much would it actually cost me to go over to Florida and drive it back and something like that. So I was looking for probably a year and a half before I found this car. And it ended up being kind of a perfect situation colliding. So I ended up getting a company car where I work around the same time that I found this Boxster. So I didn't need the Audi anymore.
Okay.
And I was getting rid of the Audi and said, all right, well, now I have this car that I can daily drive. That's practical. It was a sedan. I can fit my son and everything. Well, now I can get that second car.
All right. So the opportunity opens up. You've got a daily, so you can get your fun car. So you start looking for the Boxster. Was there a reason why you didn't why you wanted the 0.2 over the 0.1?
A couple reasons. So the 0.2, I guess the big draw to me, from a practical standpoint, it has a glove box. It's the one thing I thought that was kind of silly that the first iteration didn't. I understand why.
I forgot about that actually.
Yeah. I like the 3-spoke steering wheel. And then the 0.2 has kind of a modified front and rear bumper. It's a little bit different. And less amber in the front lights and the rear lights. And I think the amber looks really good on certain colors, but I think that's a short list of colors for me personally, and I think that's actually coming back in style now.
Yeah, I think the 0.2, the subtle changes that Porsche made to it did make it look better. For me, the main thing in the 0.2, and if I was looking at buying a Boxster, it'd be a 0.2. Primarily because it has the glass rear window on the top. It doesn't have the plastic window, which obviously gets discolored and scratched over time. That's quite an important one, I think.
Yeah, and I've heard of folks they call it the Boxster chop, where you're lowering the window, you have to get out of the car and hit it, especially if you're in cold weather.
Yeah. Okay, so you know you're going to get a 0.2. You're looking for a 0.2. So you're looking on the local the online car sites, etc. Where do you find the car? Where does the car appear? Do you go through, is this the first one you found, or did you inquire about other ones before you found this one?
Yeah, so I had found a couple here. Being in San Diego, there's no shortage of convertibles. So I had seen a few and reached out to some local people and never really got to the point of going to look. It was just going back and forth about prices, and the typical response would be, oh, someone's coming to look at it tomorrow, I'll let you know if it's still available, and they would kind of disappear. So this one that I ended up with, I actually found on Auto Trader, and that's a site here in the United States. I don't know how common that is internationally. And it was at a used car dealership up in Los Angeles. And I know the reputation used car dealerships have. My Jeep Wrangler I mentioned was from a used car dealership, so I've dealt with kind of that side of things. Some shady businesses, but it had everything I wanted. It kind of checked all my boxes. I reached out to one of the salespeople up there in Los Angeles and said, hey, I see this car on your website. It had, for me, what really helped was the Carfax report. Okay. Had something like 30 service reports on it. So I could tell, the car had been taken care of, and it was specifically serviced at a Porsche dealership in Orange County. So that gave me some peace of mind. Okay.
So you went and viewed the car personally, or you went and picked up the car?
I did, yeah. So I called the salesman on, I think it was a Thursday. I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm interested in this car. I've got to work. I'd like to come see it on Saturday if it's still available. And he said, a number of people have come to look at the car, and someone had just left and was going to come back and consider putting a deposit down on it. But the car is currently with my upholstery guy, getting one of the seats repaired. So no one can actually come look at the car until Saturday. Okay. So I think you'll be okay. I went up to look at the car that Saturday, and it was still available. I was a little wary of it getting picked up by someone else because I thought the price was fair for the mileage. So we went up when the dealership opened.
So let's tell the listeners, Jeff, what you actually bought. I mean, they would have seen it in the title, but what did you find, and tell us exactly what you bought and the color and the options that came with this car, if you know what the options were.
I do, yes. So I bought a 2004 Porsche Boxster base. and it had 105,000 miles on it. The color was a midnight blue metallic, and I can go down the list of options here. Blue seat belts, seat heating, 17-inch 986.2 S wheels, so it's got the Boxster S wheels on it.
Okay, nice.
The wheel caps with the colored Porsche crest.
Yep.
And then a storage box, and this is option code 584, storage box including speakers on the engine cover. So the car that I bought did not have speakers on the engine cover. So that's something I'll eventually probably add back to the car. At some point, that was switched out.
So I guess you have to be quick with the Boxsters, don't you now? Especially with, it's a manual, isn't it?
It is. Yep.
Yeah, so especially with a 986.2 Boxster and a manual, they're hard to come by. And especially yours is actually a really good color. I think midnight, for me, midnight blue, the silver, the yellow for some reason in Boxsters look really good as well, but I think, and the black. But I think the midnight blue is probably one of the picks of the colors. And there's not that many of them, are there? It doesn't seem like many come up for sale on the sites I look at in the UK and Australia anyway.
Yeah, no, I don't see many blue. It's a lot of silver. Every once in a while you see kind of the diamonds in the rough. Yeah, like the midnight blue. I love blue cars. I've had a bunch of blue cars. So it was a natural pick for me. You'll see greens pop up. I love the green color, but
that's very rare though, isn't it? The green
rare.
is very, very rare. I saw a green once, I think. That's it, once. So you go to this dealer in Los Angeles, right? So you go to the dealer. What were your first impressions when you saw the car? So you go there, the car's still there. What were your first impressions?
I think my first impression was that it was beautiful. It looked like it had just been detailed, as they would have done. So it looked great. There were, and this is again classic kind of used car dealership for anyone who's ever bought a car from a used dealership. There was a tear, in the soft top that I'm looking at. I'm like, man, that's not repairable. That's got to be replaced.
It's got to be replaced, yeah.
Yeah. I saw the repair they did on the driver's seat, and it looks good, and it's held up now a year later. But I think eventually that might need to be replaced. But overall, my impression was, for the price the car was listed at, it was a fair condition, and assuming nothing was wrong mechanically, it was exactly where it should have been.
So it had 100,000 miles, is that correct?
It did, yep.
So 100,000 miles, was there a solid service history and solid owner history? You knew how many owners had the car, or was it a bit sort of vague?
I did, yeah. So the only service history I had to go by was the Carfax report. And are you familiar with Carfax?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Okay. So I know I've checked Carfax on my own cars before, and it's shoddy at best. I've definitely had a car that's been in for service, and then I've sold it and looked at the Carfax report. I'm like, oh man, those 5 trips to the delership, none of those are on here where I, had all this work done.
Yeah.
And that to me would have been a good thing. I would have been able to show, hey, this was all done. I had receipts, so it wasn't a problem for me. But yeah, the Carfax for this car had, like I said, I think it was 30 records, and it had 105,000 miles. So I saw the clutch had just been done at 100,000 miles. The water pump had been replaced. The brake pads were new. And then again, another used car dealership tactic, new brakes. And yeah, the pads were new. The rotors need to be replaced.
Right. So did you, my favorite question is, did you get an inspection done, or did you trust the dealer? Did you trust your sort of, intuition? What did you do? Did you get an inspection?
I did not, no. And I think I had mentioned it to the dealer, and he had enough interest in the car that I don't know that he would have let me drive it off the lot for an inspection. He might have let me bring someone there. So I had a list of things to check for, fluids, the brakes, and dampness in the trunk. It's a common, the coolant expansion tank leaks. That's a common problem with the 986s. So I looked at all that. I checked the brakes, I checked the tires. I was comfortable in my research that I at least had a good enough understanding of what I was looking at. Any major problem would come to me immediately. And I also took it out for a test drive. We went into the hills in Hollywood.
Okay.
And yeah, nothing. The clutch wasn't slipping. The clutch was brand new at the time.
Okay, so you did basic research, so you knew the main areas to look for, basically, for the Boxster, the main things of concern. So the car had a new clutch. This was done just before you bought it, was it? The clutch?
It was done 5,000 miles before I bought it. So the clutch was replaced 1,000 miles later, and we can get into that in a minute.
Yeah. Oh, it was replaced. Okay. So when they replace the clutch, they always do the IMS. Was the IMS done at the same time, or was it done earlier, or has it not been done?
Right. So this was a key piece of me looking at the car. I had seen, and this is a mistake I made that hopefully anyone listening to this podcast learns from this. So I saw the car had been serviced at a Porsche dealership basically all its life. So it was a two-owner vehicle. It was a leased vehicle, and then someone bought it a couple of years later and had owned it ever since. Okay. And then they ended up trading it into this dealership. But I saw that the clutch had been replaced and thought, oh, okay, from everything I've read, someone replaced the clutch, they probably did the IMS bearing at the same time. What I learned after buying the car from talking to an independent mechanic here in San Diego is Porsche dealerships specifically do not replace the IMS. They tend to go with, it's designed fine, the same way they didn't end up covering its replacement. So I learned that the hard way and ended up getting it replaced. But that's something to note. If the car's got a solid service history at a Porsche dealership, it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
Yeah, I guess if they acknowledge that they've changed the IMS, that sort of admits their fault, doesn't it? It does actually admit that there's something wrong with it.
Exactly.
They don't really want to do. All right, so you've done. You've looked over the car, you're at the dealer, it's not going to last very long. They're quite sought after, especially in manual, especially in point 2. So you do the deal there and then, you decide that's it, I'm going to take this car?
I did, yeah. I went for a drive and I loved it. It was everything. So this is my first time actually driving a Porsche was when I drove this car.
Okay, fantastic.
And it was everything I expected it to be. It had 105,000 miles and the suspension had never been replaced. So there were some creaks, but nothing that was unmanageable. So yeah, I put together a list of, I had inspected the car. I saw the soft top needed to be replaced. The passenger window regulator was clearly broken. It was making this terrible creaking noise that people would be familiar with a 986 or 996. So I kind of, went to the guy, the salesman, and said, hey, here's what I think this is going to cost. How about we take it off the price? And yeah, we made the deal right there, and I drove the car home that day.
Okay, so you got a slightly better price due to the things that he would have known had to be done as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So tell us that feeling, Jeff, because I know people who haven't had a 911 before. We've had many people on a 911 or a Porsche or a Boxster on the owner's stories before. And it's that first drive. It's not really the test drive. It's that first drive when you're alone with it and you drive back home or, whether it be a long trip or a short trip, and you start to realize what you've actually got. How is the feeling?
Yeah, it was amazing. So it was a beautiful day in LA in Southern California. So yeah, I left the dealership immediately, put the top down, dropped all the windows. I got on the freeway. Anyone familiar with LA? It was, late morning on a Saturday and there was bumper to bumper traffic and that was awful. There's nothing like jumping back into a standard transmission and having to sit in bumper to bumper traffic.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, once I got out of Los Angeles and down into Orange County and San Diego, just cruising down the freeway and the ocean's right there on the 5 in San Diego, it was amazing and kind of surreal for me. This was a car I had wanted for 20 years plus, and to actually have it in my hand, sitting in the car, driving it home, I really couldn't believe it. So yeah, it was a great feeling.
Yeah, it's a great feeling, isn't it? So, okay, so you get the car home to San Diego. You're living with it for a week or When did you buy the car? What month was it?
I bought it in May.
So you bought it in May
of 2020.
So, okay, so you've had it for almost a year. You start to get used to the car. What things started to appear and you thought, well, I knew I had to repair these. I knew I had to get them done. Were there more surprises that you didn't know about, or was it pretty much what you expected?
No, I actually didn't have any new surprises in driving it myself. So I didn't notice anything. I immediately took the car to get the oil changed, and asked the mechanic who did that, hey, can you run it over a quick inspection? He lifted the car up, and I was there looking at it. Kind of as expected, the suspension was, all the rubber bushings were done. They needed to be replaced.
Right.
So we saw all that, but I expected that. I mean, I heard it, as I went over bumps at slow speeds, you could hear it creaking. So none of that was a surprise. The hood struts didn't work, but I knew that was an easy replacement on my end.
Yeah, which happens to everyone, those ones.
Yep. But yeah, no real surprises. But I guess my first surprise with the car came a couple months later. So I bought the car in May. I was driving it around, throughout May, June. Everything was great. We've got some great roads here in San Diego, and being summertime was even better. So I decided it was time to really start considering the suspension refresh that I wanted to do. So I took it to another mechanic, not the gentleman who had done the first inspection. And, he said, well, before I do any work on your car, let me get it up on a lift and take a look. And as I was driving it in, and this was in July, I think, it had started to develop a really bad creak over bumps. So typically your drop links go, or your tie rods or control arms start going, those bushings, and you'll hear a kind of a thud as you go over a bump or something. This was different. It was very loud and very prominent on the left front fender. I could hear where it was coming from, and I didn't know enough to know what it was. So I drove it in, and he looked at it, and the upper strut mount was failing on the front of the car. So that was the first, oh shit, or excuse me, oh crap moment. I'm going to need to do this. I can't really drive the car. I don't want the strut, to puncture through the fender as I'm driving it.
So you took the car to a Porsche specialist, or it's just a general mechanic that you trusted?
No, a Porsche specialist.
Porsche specialist.
Yep.
So that was the first thing you had to fix? How were normally when you get a car that's, 20 years old or close to 20 years old, obviously, like you said, it's the suspension, it's the tires. The tires haven't been changed. They could be original or very old. The clutch, you said the clutch had been changed, but you had a surprise. So the first thing you do is get all the suspension up to speed,
Yeah, so I actually haven't finished on the suspension yet. So probably the first thing I did the oil change, and I knew from when I purchased the car, the front tires, I think they were 7 years old, and they were starting to show the cracking. So the rear tires were fine. I got the front tires replaced, but not a surprise. I knew I had to do it. So yeah, I went in, and my thought here, so I had now learned about, the fact that a Porsche dealership wouldn't have replaced the IMS bearing. And I said, oh, well, if I'm going to spend, all this money, basically the value of the car on upgrading the suspension, I don't want the engine to fail on me. I don't want to spend, $6,000, $7,000 and then the engine fails. So I'm going to, for me personally, I'm going to replace the IMS bearing. And I know that's a very heated topic. I'm on the Facebook groups and all that. I think it's one of those things where if you're going to invest in the car, and I want to have this car for a long time, for me, it seemed like a no-brainer. I could understand if I was going to leave the car stock and just ride it out. Would I have spent the money on the IMS bearing? Probably not. I probably would have just let it go.
I guess the debate is the fact that your car has 100,000 miles. And people say if it gets to that sort of mileage, then you're pretty much okay. I mean, you've read those comments on the forums, right? Where other people say, well, it still could happen. It's not an easy decision because also the IMS solutions aren't guaranteed forever. They only last X amount of years or X amount of kilometers or whatever they put on it. So right. I'm interested actually. So you buy a Boxster. Boxsters are vary in price depending on the condition. Is it really $7,000 to fix up the suspension?
It depends on what you want to do, and it depends on who's doing the work.
Okay.
So I think you can buy, You can buy springs and struts probably for this is US dollars, $800, $1,000. You could probably do most of the work yourself or have someone do it. It's not the end of the world to have those parts put in. But then once you start adding in the tie rods, the control arms, the CV joints and the rear axle, the parts get up there in cost. You can end up at a couple $1,000s just in parts alone. So then you do all that and you need to have it aligned, and you can go to your local alignment shop or, in my case, I'm going to the name of the shop for anyone in San Diego is Volig. So he specializes in building race cars.
Okay.
And the like.
So that's my question, Jeff. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting. So are you upgrading your suspension? Are you keeping it stock OEM or are you making it just that little bit better?
So my ultimate goal is to completely upgrade. Yeah. So I'd like to put coilovers on the car. That's my plan. Okay. I'm not there yet because of the cost I mentioned. Right. I'm kind of my plan is to have this car for a long time. It's not something I bought it now I need to get everything done right away. So I had to have the upper strut mount done in the front, like I said. So while the whole suspension was taken apart in the front, I had the control arms replaced. I had the tie rods done. I had done the drop links myself, and I use standard drop links. And now when I do the coilovers, I'm going to have to switch to an adjustable drop link, which is fine. The drop links are an easy job. I know it's a common thud that people hear on these cars if anyone wants to do it themselves.
So you're saving a little bit of money here and there by doing some of the work yourself, are you?
Yep. Yeah. So I had that work done, and I am not a mechanic by any sense of the imagination.
Okay.
But yeah, my thought with this car was I would learn, kind of as I went. So yeah, the drop links was the first suspension piece that I did myself. I'd like to do the spark plugs coming up, the hood struts, so some of these basic items, I'm trying to do myself. But once we get into alignment and the real suspension bits, I'm not really comfortable doing that. And I'm okay paying someone else who really knows what they're doing to do that work.
That makes sense. So let's go back to the IMS. Makes sense that you're getting the IMS done. You're going to keep the car for a long time. Boxsters are only going to appreciate. They're only going to go up in price. Considering how low they are now, really, they're only going to go up in price. So it's a good investment. I still think Boxsters are going to be very collectible in the years to come. So the IMS, what solution do you go with? Do you go with LN Engineering or do you go with someone else?
Yes, I went with LN Engineering, and that was because of LN Engineering's reputation. I think I don't know for a fact. I don't know enough about them to know if any other brand is inferior product or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just know if someone asks, an enthusiast or anyone else, if it's been done, they're looking for that LN Engineering sticker. They're looking for the paperwork that says LN Engineering.
True.
They want to be able to search it on their website. So it was something, I got a quote, I think, for another product, and it was a couple $100 cheaper, and it just didn't make sense. It was, why do that if I can get the real deal, and do the LN Engineering.
So to do the IMS now, US price is about $1,500 US, is it?
It's in that ballpark. Yeah, I think it was between 1,500 and 2,000, somewhere around there.
Okay, so the IMS, it's been done. You've had that done already.
So that was where my first surprise came in. So like I said, the clutch had been done at 100,000 miles. Yeah, and I got it at 105, and I bring it in. So they drop the transmission. He replaces the IMS RMS. And I went up there to check it out. I wanted to see it. I was interested in seeing it. And he showed me the transmission, and we're looking at the clutch and flywheel. And he's like, this clutch, and this, again, 5,000 miles, this clutch has about 50% life on it.
Really?
So yeah, there was whoever had owned the car before. And then I looked back in the service records, and the clutch was new at 100,000 miles. And then the clutch was replaced previously at 90,000 miles. So whoever owned the car.
How could you go through a clutch with so little miles though? That's very low.
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, that's very low, isn't it?
Yeah. So and that's kind of what the mechanic, he was like, look, someone's completely abused this clutch.
I thought you were going to say that they said it had been done, but it hadn't been done. I thought that's what you were going to say. So they just had literally worn the clutch out in 5,000 miles.
Yes. Yeah. So, wow. And he was like, I can put this clutch back in, it's got 50% life, but I've got the clutch down on the ground.
Yeah.
Why don't you just, at this point, just buy a new clutch. I'll throw it in there for you. The labor cost is zero because the clutch has already come out. It's got to go back in.
That's good peace of mind. You'd have to do it though, Jeff, wouldn't you? You had to do it. I mean, that's
that was
peace of mind then. At least the IMS is done, the clutch is done, the RMS is done. So that's all sorted.
And then a question I know people might ask. So the IMS bearing that came out, it was fine.
It was fine. Okay.
It was fine. Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? But I guess, it may not be fine in years to come. You don't know that exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It still gives you a better feeling when you're driving it and you know that it's been done and you protected, so to speak. Right. All right, so you've done the IMS, you've got a new clutch, you're revitalizing, you're changing over the suspension, you're making it, that little bit better. What else do you have to do?
So I did a couple of items myself, and then I had the shop do a few more. So one of the major things I noticed was the car at idle. It almost had a heartbeat to it, where it was really rocking back and forth, and I didn't know. Again, this is my first Porsche and my first sports car, so I didn't know if that was normal. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, no, the motor mount probably needs to be replaced. And I did some searching, and you would see when you went hard into gear, I would actually feel the engine kind of throw itself backwards. I did the motor mount, and that was a debate there of whether to go semi-solid or original with the motor mount. The feedback I had heard on the motor mounts is if you go semi-solid, then you start messing with the knock sensors.
Yeah.
And it really becomes an uncomfortable car to drive, on the roads as a daily driver. And I didn't want that. My wife likes riding in the car, so I didn't want to do that. I did the motor mount the same time I did the clutch and all that work.
So you went with the OEM mounts, right? The standard OEM engine mounts. Yeah. I mean, yep. Steve has said the same story actually about his GT3 when he went to Autohouse Hamilton, who we use in Sydney, and he wanted to upgrade to more sort of solid mounts, better different mounts, different brand, aftermarket brand. And he was advised against it as well, just to stick with the OEM because the ride would just not be that great.
Right. So, and what I've heard is if you only track your car, if you only use your car driving in the canyons, the solid mount is great. It really helps with that weight transfer. But anything outside of that, it just becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah, you need to have a balance, don't you? You can't go too hardcore. So, how's the sound of your Boxster? I like exhaust mods. How's the sound of your Boxster? Is there something planned there?
Yes, there is. So it's something, the sound is okay. It's not amazing. I had an Audi A3, probably sounds about the same as the A3. It's nothing crazy. So yes, I would like to modify the exhaust. I do not want to have a drone. So I've read about the Borla exhaust and the Fab Speed. I know are two that are recommended, but they both have drones at certain RPMs. I reached out to Pfister. I know you've got the Pfister exhaust.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm considering. So the only problem with Pfister is they don't do core exchanges for the 986.
Oh, okay.
So the 986 muffler is huge. It's I'm looking at the desk in front of me. It's the size of the desk in front of me, and probably 40 pounds. And he just said, hey, we don't have room to stock, cores of Boxster 986 mufflers. If they did core exchanges, that's something I'd probably do in a heartbeat. I'd probably buy it from them and do a road trip up to Northern California to have them swap it out. So I've considered dropping the muffler, maybe do it myself and mail it to them, have them send it back. I'm also considering, I don't know if you're familiar with Pedro Bonilla and Pedro's board.
No.
But okay, so Pedro Bonilla is a Boxster enthusiast, and we've got Porsche Panorama is the PCA magazine here in America. So he's like, their technical advisor on the Boxster.
Oh, okay.
So he's got a board, and there's the Pedro Sport exhaust. And essentially what his modification is it takes, I think it's 1.25 inches or 1.5 inch pipe, and welds it to the muffler intakes. And then the pipe goes around and goes directly to the exhaust on the back end of the muffler. It's very similar to the Pfister mod.
So similar to the Pfister, yeah. So how does the price compare to the Pfister, though? Because the Pfister is getting slightly up there in price lately. I noticed, I went onto his website, Darren Pfister's website, FD Motorsports, the other day, just to see the price of, for another 911, actually, another price of the exhaust. And they're getting quite expensive now. They weren't. I don't think they were that expensive when I bought mine. I can't remember them being that much.
Yeah, no, and I looked actually this past week. I was looking, and the price went up. It was for the Boxster. I think it went up about $50, probably since I was last looking, a couple months ago. So the Pedro Sport exhaust, the PSE as it's known on the forums, is something you can have any muffler shop do. So I went to a muffler shop and I took, there's the drawings, and Pedro's got it on his website, and this is what you do. This is the size pipe you use. This is where you connect it. And they said they would probably be able to do all that work. They wouldn't know for sure until they got it down, but about $300.
Well, for that money, it's worth a try, isn't it?
Right.
If other people have done it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you read that it's good. There's no drone. You're still using the stock muffler. It's just got this bypass, and it ends up being very similar to the sports exhaust option on the Boxster, and that's a very uncommon option on the Boxsters, at least from what I've seen. But it's a similar bypass right to the
and I think those bypasses are good. I mean, like the Pfister, the main consideration for me, and I've said it many times before, is I didn't want drone inside the cabin, like what you said. I don't want that drone. I just want that, that when you put your foot down, when you're in a certain gear, you get that really nice sound, and Pfister really does deliver that. And I'm sure other exhausts, like I know a lot of people are buying the Soul Performance exhaust systems and things like that for Porsches now. But for me, the Pfister is a really good one. I have actually heard a Pfister on a Boxster a few years back, and I remember it sounding pretty well, but I think it was a Boxster S. I don't think it was a standard Boxster. So I'm not sure how the sound differs.
Yeah, and then the problem is, no matter how you watch a YouTube video, the exhaust sound
it's too hard to hear. You can never understand the sound of it. I was trying to do that before I bought the Pfister, and it was just impossible to find the right sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about the gear? What about the gearing? What about the short shifter kit? Is that something you would get? How's the throw when you're on the Boxster?
Yeah, it's something I'm considering. So the throw is long, and I know that's kind of a critique of the Boxster. I think the 996 might be the same.
It's probably the same as my 997, isn't it? It's probably a very similar throw. How it used
no,
to be.
it's a longer throw. So there's two upgrades that are recommended for the short shift. The one is just I think it's the standard 997 shift kit, and that's what I've read, a 20% shorter throw.
Yeah, that's what I have.
That. Okay, and then there's the 997 short shift kit, which then goes even further. And
that's what I have. Yeah, I have the short shift kit for the 997. Yeah,
and that's something like a 40% shorter throw. So that's a drastic difference.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something I'd like to do. So the muffler and the short shift kit are kind of on my wish list, but not required. So I'm working through the suspension first.
Yeah,
and then I'll get to the the nice to have items.
Good idea. And let's talk about the interior. Interior on Porsches, on 911s, on Boxsters, especially when they're 2000 upwards, when they're close to 20 years old. They always have a little bit of wear. Porsche's not so great with some of their knobs and dials. They wear off, like the air conditioning buttons on the 997 are terrible, and I had to change mine. I had to change my air conditioning unit. But the seats are always a bit of an issue, the bolsters of the seats. How are your seats? You said you had to have a repair done, but how is the general condition of your interior? Was it okay, or was it need a bit of work?
It was okay. So yeah, the repair was just on the leather attachment on the outside of the driver's side seat, and I don't know whether it tore and they just shortened it, and in doing that, I think they actually tightened up the leather, so it looks pretty good. But as far as wear, a common thing to go on these cars is the screen on the air conditioning. So that had, I think it's known as the rising sun on the forums. It kind of started
yes,
to go
yes.
over.
It's a cheap fix, isn't it? I did notice that in your Instagram that you did that.
Yep.
The LCD screen just goes blurry, doesn't it? The orange
It
LCD.
does. Yeah. So the first month I owned the car, I had no idea what temperature it was.
That would drive me crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, that was, you buy a new screen, for what it is. I mean, it's $80. So it seems expensive for what it is.
Is that a Porsche part or is that an aftermarket part?
It's a Porsche part. Yeah.
Oh, it's a Porsche part. Okay.
Yeah.
And you do that yourself? It just clips in, does it?
I did. Yeah. You take it out, similar to how you would remove a stereo. You just slide it out and kind of the thing pops apart. You pull this little screen out. You can see the damage in it. And then you just pop a new one in and put the whole thing back together. And it works right away.
Okay. I'll just tell the listeners before. I actually forgot to tell them earlier. So if you want to look at Jeff's car on Instagram while we're talking, it's at Midnight Blue 986.2. So at Midnight Blue 986.2. Jeff's got an image of that faulty screen and a few other things that you've done. So what else, Jeff? Was there anything else you had to fix?
Yeah, on the inside. So I was missing a driver's side floor mat. And that's something that goes on any car.
But that's the best way to freshen up your car when you buy an old car, isn't it? Just replace the front floor mats. It makes a huge difference.
It is.
Huge difference.
Yep. So I got new floor mats from Lloyd Mats, the Ultimats, which I would recommend. They're great.
Yeah, they're great. Very nice.
What else? The stereo. So my car had the factory stereo, and I was okay with it. I'm not one of those that needs the car to be original, for its life. I was fine with keeping it, but I found out about a week in that it didn't really work. It was stuck on certain radio stations. I'd pop a CD in, and the same song would play over and over again, and that was driving me nuts. Because I don't listen to it much, but when I drive the car to work, I like to listen to podcasts. When we're going on long drives, especially with my wife, she likes to listen to music with the top down, and it's something to that. So I took the original stereo out. I still have it. It doesn't work correctly, but if anyone ever purchase the car, they could have it with the car. It's fine. And I found one that slid right in, and it has the color, so I'm able to get it to color match with the rest of the interior. Okay. Which was great. And I got
so your Boxster doesn't have the navigation, right? It just has
just the single DIN. Yep.
Just a single one,
no navigation.
Right. So what did you upgrade it to? What brand did you change that just slips in? For the people who are listening who have got a Boxster and looking for something, what did you actually purchase?
Yeah, let me actually. I think it's a Pioneer unit.
Because these things are always hard to find if you don't really know, that are easy sort of plug and play in a way.
Yeah, so I used Clutchfield was the company I used to get the stereo. And I'd recommend Clutchfield to anybody who's looking to do any audio work to their car. They were great. I believe it was Pioneer. I'm just trying to find the
yeah, I've heard their name before, actually. They're quite well known, aren't they? In that field. Yeah. Very well known.
But one item that was very, let's call it annoying about changing out the stereo is with the Boxster, they had, it was a Kenwood unit.
Okay.
Yep. They've got the MOST system is what it's called, MOST.
Yes.
And it's where there's the single cable that goes back from the center console to the amp in the front trunk, the frunk. And then connects to all the speakers. That was a nightmare to change out. So I installed the new unit. I had to pull the amplifier out. I wasn't going to be able to get the amp to work. I ran a new cable through the firewall to the front trunk, and because all the speaker wires were already there in the front trunk, instead of pulling them all back, I just ran this cable up to the front and wired in all the existing speakers, and then. If and when I do add rear speakers, I'll add a new amp. I'll need to add an amp to run all those speakers.
So it seems like you're getting the car up to good shape, though. You're doing a lot of work on it. What is left that you want to do cosmetically? Is there anything you want to do? Any other mods you want to add to the car?
There are a few, yeah. So I'd like to eventually get the wheels painted. So my wheels, they're in good shape, but when you look at them, you'll see there are areas where they've been repaired and filled in, but then not painted. So the wheels silver, but you'll see, and it looks pristine from 5 feet away, and then you get up close and you see there's a patch.
They do look pretty good.
It's white. Yep. So I'd like to eventually get those done, and I go back and forth. I had a quote for redoing the wheels, and it was for all 4 corners. It was $600 to just refinish them as they are, or $1,000 to have them refinished and then painted any color I wanted. So I'm considering switching to like a gunmetal type of color on the wheel.
Nice, nice. Especially with the midnight blue, it'll look good.
Yep. I'm considering getting the brake calipers painted. Again, and I know people would say, oh, if you paint them red, you're trying to pretend to be a Boxster or a Boxster S. And that's not what I would do. I'm actually considering yellow. I mean, you get they're not ceramic brakes, they shouldn't be yellow. I don't really care about all that. But when you look at the brake calipers, you can see some wear. I mean, they're 17 years old with 105,000 miles on them, so it would just make them look a little nicer.
Yeah, the calipers fade, don't they? I mean, mine are like that on my 997. I think it's the front and not the rear. They sort of start to fade a little bit. I know some people take the wheel off and they can clean it up, or they put wax on them and somehow bring back the color of mine are just black. But I don't know if that works. But I think yellow is a good idea, Jeff. I think yellow actually would work really well with you, especially if you get that sort of platinum wheel.
Right.
That Porsche color platinum wheel, similar to what I have, I guess, which is a platinum or that sort of color. Original Porsche color. I'm always a big fan of getting an original Porsche color wheel, because then if you want to get the center caps, they match perfectly.
Yep, and that was my plan actually, was to get the center cap first and bring it and just say, hey, how about you guys match the center cap?
Yeah, which is what I did with my wheels when I had them done in the UK and took them back to Australia. I actually, Chris at XL Wheels, who did them, who's very, very good here in the UK, did them with the actual Porsche color wheel. Was the wheel. And then he just bought the cap. He bought the caps for me, and they match perfectly. So that's
yeah.
And it's because my wheels I had on my car previously on the Tech Heart 20-inch, the previous owner put the caps on, and the caps didn't match. They were like silver, and the wheel was like a grey sort of color, so it didn't actually match, which means you have to get them all sprayed, and it's just a hassle. So it looks like the paintwork of your car is in pretty good condition too for a 20-year-old car. Like, unless you've detailed it very well, but it looks like it's in pretty good nick.
The paint when I bought it, I was impressed with the condition of the paint, especially considering the car had spent its entire life down here in Southern California, where it's sunny most of the time. So I don't know, again, if the previous owner had kept it in a garage. There's no real indication of any paint work having been done to the car. I'd like to respray the front bumper at some point. The previous owner screwed the license plate directly into the front bumper instead of using the brackets.
Oh, okay.
So I want to get that repaired, and then there's a bunch of nicks on there. I've decided to take the front license plate off. I think the car looks a lot better, and if I ever get pulled over, I'm sure I'll put it right back on.
Oh, it's not legal in San Diego?
Not in California, no.
Okay, so it just fell off, basically. That's what you told
me. It did, yeah.
It just fell off.
The screw failed, and I've got the big holes in the bumper to prove that.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, there's a few weird edges of paint that I've found in the trunk. I don't really know how that happened. But again, I got the car for a fair price with 105,000 miles, so I'm not expecting it to be a concours condition car. And the paint from any standpoint aside from me washing the car looks great. It looks excellent.
Yeah, no, it does. Okay, so you've got the Boxster. It's a car you've always wanted. I'm going to ask this question. Is this going to be enough for you? Is there going to be another Porsche on the horizon and then in the future? Has this bug started where, one is not enough, or you're quite happy just to keep this one?
So I'd always like to have another one. Are you still looking at classifieds? I do still look. I look almost every day. Yeah. It was funny. I was looking at one point, maybe it was about a year ago at a 996 C4S, and I'm kicking myself now that I didn't buy it. I could have sold it and bought 2 Boxsters with the price increase on those cars. But yeah, I'm not currently looking with the intent to buy. I was looking at a Cayenne. Was looking for Cayenne GTSs for a while.
Okay.
Something a little bit more practical. I actually recently turned in the company car and bought a 2004 Range Rover.
Okay.
And those come with their own issues.
Doesn't have air suspension, does it?
It does. It does. Yeah, one of them's already been replaced.
Yeah.
And it's in the shop now as we're talking. It's decided the coolant wanted to come out last week.
You realize how reliable the Porsche is when you have a Range Rover, don't you?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny that now the Boxster right now, while the Range Rover is in the shop, has become my daily driver, which is great. I love every opportunity to get in it. So yeah, I was looking at Cayenne GTSs. I shied away from that. Ended up with the Range Rover. I think down the road, I really like the 997.2 Targas, and I know that's not a popular car, the Targa.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because Mark from the UK, who's got the Cassis Red 3.2 Carrera, I don't know if you heard that owner's story. Mark actually said the same thing. He really likes the Targa. And I kind of overlooked the 997 Targa. And I have to admit, after speaking to Mark, I've been looking at them again. And he's right. It's that silver detail that goes around the window to the back, the line of that car.
Yep.
And the fact that they are quite rare, Jeff, you know what I mean? There's not that many of them. And they weren't, they weren't loved. Let's be honest, they weren't loved.
Right.
But I think that car could be one that could become very, very collectible, I think
it will. I think it will in the future, and especially the 997.2.
Yeah.
For sure. I like, now that I've got a 1-year-old running around my house, the practicality of kind of the being able to lift up the back window in the Targa. To me, that seems great.
Good idea. Yeah.
And then I'd probably go with, I'd consider a PDK for that car. For me, I wanted something with the Boxster. My car is basically as analog as it comes outside of the throttle. It's an electronic throttle. I think they switched in '99, but I don't have any stability management. The only thing I've got is ABS. And to me, that's, I want to become a better driver. So the Boxster is, to me, the perfect car to do that in.
So a lot of people take the Boxster on the track because of the balance, because of the mid-engine, because of the whole feel of it. Is that something you'd like to do with your car? Or
it is. I think it's in the future. And that's part of why I'm going with coilovers versus like just a low range spring and new dampers. It's something I want to get into. The autocross here in San Diego has been shut down right now. The parking lot where it used to be is no longer. So I know they're working on finding a new spot. But yeah, I'd like to get into autocross and then eventually do some driver's ed days on the track.
Sounds good. So there's a really strong Porsche community, Porsche club in San Diego?
There is, yeah. The San Diego region, they do. Last event I did a beer tasting with them a couple months ago. That was fun. And then we did a drive in December. The community's so big here, they actually had to do 2 different drives. They had to schedule the same drive on 2 different weekends. Wow. And that's been really, really cool and fun for me, kind of getting to know the people here in San Diego who drive Porsches. I was behind a Boxster S for the entire drive, and it was, there was a 944 turbo behind me, and it's just a fun mix, and then there's GT3 RSs.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. Yeah, I just want to go back to the Range Rover, Range Rover actually. So you were deciding on a Cayenne GTS and a Range Rover, but you bought the Range Rover. Was there a reason why you didn't end up going with the Porsche? Now you're a Porsche person with your Boxster. Was there a reason?
Yes, cost.
So the Range Rover is much cheaper?
It is, yeah. It is, and it was. That particular year, it's got the V8 BMW engine in it, and they're notorious for leaks. So that's, like I said, I've owned that car a month, and it's in the shop right now. It has both an oil and a coolant leak. But, I was going through that scenario and said, I'm going to get this Range Rover. It's going to be cheap. And even if it has, I went through the list of repairs that are common. If it has every single one of these items fail in the next 3 months, I can replace every single one in a separate instance going to the shop and still, not have spent the amount of money I'll need to spend to to get the Cayenne GTS
Okay.
I was looking at.
All right.
So,
Well, that makes sense.
yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
But that said, I think the GTS, the Cayenne specifically, is a great car, especially that first and second generation.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking car, the GTS. It's really nice. Even the turbo and the GTS are really, really nice.
Right.
So we're getting towards the end of the podcast. Tell me about San Diego and tell me about the roads that you've taken your Boxster on so far, or the roads that you want to drive on, and let the listeners know if they come to the San Diego area after the COVID lockdown and when people can travel again, where would you drive your Porsche or your sports car?
Yep. Yeah. So I've got a list of both favorite roads I like to take, and then I've got what I call my bucket list of roads. So starting from least exciting, I live downtown and I live in San Diego around the city.
Okay.
I like to take the car, and usually it's like a Sunday afternoon thing or a weeknight. I'll take the car over to Coronado and drive down Silver Strand Boulevard. That's down Imperial Beach, and it's a road that just runs along the ocean. It's nothing exciting. It's a straight section of road, but there's something really relaxing about the sun setting and the ocean waves and having the top down in the convertible. It's like a 30-minute drive I like to do. My favorite drive in San Diego is Otay Lakes Road and Lions Valley Road. Okay. So that's out in a town called Jamul. It's about, leaving from downtown San Diego, it's about a 2-hour loop, and I'll go out on Otay Lakes Road, drive to the end of Lions Valley Road, and then just turn the car around and come back. And I think I've done it 3 times in one trip once. It's just a super, super cool landscape. A lot of the first part of the drive is really tight and technical, and the second part has a couple straightaways with a really wild landscape going through the forest out there.
Sounds good.
So that's the drive I do most often. It's 2 hours. I'll get away early in the morning. If anyone listening lives in San Diego and wants to go for a drive on a weekend morning, reach out to me and I'd love to take you there. And then the next drive that I've now done twice, I did it with Porsche Club, goes from 78 in Escondido out to Anza-Borrega Desert State Park, and that's got a mix of twisties and then a big straightaway. So yeah, I did that with the Porsche Club, and it was very challenging in certain parts. And then the stretch going into the desert, I mean, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. It's beautiful. And Michael, I can send you a video of that. So you should.
Challenging as in it's very twisty, or it's just
very
different elevations. Yeah.
Very twisty and different elevations.
Wow. Sounds good. Yeah, no, it's exciting when you get a Porsche, isn't it? You're thinking about the best roads and the roads, and you find one you like and you just want to keep going there. It's just always like, I've just got to go there again. I mean, the Royal National Park in Sydney, outside of Sydney, which people will know about, people who are listening from Australia, is a great stretch of road. And another road called the Putty Road that I went on with Steve once, which I'm going to do again when I get back to Sydney, because it's just, it's a good 3-hour drive and it's just fantastic, and not much traffic, no police. It's just a fantastic place just to let it out, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. It's relaxing. And it's funny. I say it's relaxing. My wife would beg to differ as she sits in the seat, grabbing onto the grab rails as tight as possible. Yeah. She's there screaming. I'm like, be quiet. I got to focus.
Are you sure you're not going too fast? That's what they say. Are you sure you're not going too fast? Not at all. Yeah. Not at all.
But she's probably been the most impressed. She's like, I can't believe this. You're taking these turns at these speeds and the car just stays on the road. It feels like it's glued to the road.
But isn't that the one thing you kind of know it, Jeff, but it's a weird thing. Until you get a Porsche, whether it be a 911 or a Boxster, it's that thing, isn't it? It's the handling around a corner. It's the way you can take a corner and the speed you can take a corner compared to your Audis, for example. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a surreal feeling when you're really going at it. Yeah.
It's just the grip and the balance and the weight transfer. It's just everything about it is just quite amazing. It really is something special, and which is why we keep saying, if you want a Porsche, you should get into it, soon and not wait. And I think the Boxster is a great first Porsche. It's a great car. You know what I mean? The Boxster is a really, really good car. And, anyone that's listening who's thinking, I can't get into a 996 now because 996 prices have gone crazy. And 997 prices are now going even worse because of the 996s. Look at the Boxster, because there's so many, they're obviously a lot cheaper in the US than Australia. But they're a great Porsche, and not just a first Porsche, they're just a great Porsche.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think you even said you were considering a Boxster at one point, right?
I still am. I still think about it.
Yep.
I'm still looking at them because, they're slowly going up in price. But, in Australia, they range from like 30 to 50,000 for a 986.2. I think that's
wow.
a Boxster or Boxster S, depending. But there's very few that come up, Jeff. You know what I mean? Especially in manual.
Yep.
Very, very few that come up, especially if you want a 0.2.
Yeah. Yeah. Here in the States, you can find them, typically higher mileage, but you can find them for $6,000, $7,000. I've seen them a little bit less. I think the better examples are starting to go up in price a little bit, but it's all relative. It's going up from, it was $8,000, $9,000 a year or two ago, and now it's 10 or 11,000. So it's still not a deal breaker.
Yeah, and as long as you're realistic, like you said, you know that you're going to have to do things to it. There's going to be certain things that are worn out, suspension, tires, all those sort of things. So as long as you sort of factor that in, it's still a really good buy. It's definitely a great buy. Jeff, great story. Thank you for being on Owner Stories today. I always like to keep these to about an hour, and I know you've got an appointment in about an hour's time as well, so you've also got to go. Is there anything? I just want everyone to go to Jeff's Instagram, which is at midnightblue 986.2. I'll put the link in the description of this podcast. Go over to Jeff's Instagram, follow him, say hello. I know all the guys who have been on Owner Stories before will be coming over and saying hello to you because it's become a one big community once you've been on this episode. But before we go, is there anything else you'd like to tell the listeners?
I would just say if you're thinking about getting a Porsche and you see something come up like you and Steve always talk about, just get whatever comes up. It's going to need, especially if it's an older car like this, it's going to need some work, but you can budget for that, and it's going to come, and you can kind of make the car your own, I think, in that sense. And that's the beauty of cars like this.
Yeah, and I think you're doing it in the right way. You're getting the things that you can't do yourself done by a professional, by a Porsche specialist. You're sort of timing the things that you need to do first. You do the important things first. You're going to keep the car for a while, and then eventually it's just going to be exactly how you want it. It's going to be yours. And I think that's a really great way of doing it. But anyway, I think everyone should go and look at Jeff's Instagram because his car, it looks really, really good. The paintwork looks good, good images. I'm glad you started that Instagram up, Jeff, and you're starting to document it. I like your posts as well. I like how you write in the description and you tell people what's happening. It's a good page, so keep that up because it's good for people getting into the brand and getting into looking for a Boxster, and I think it really would help a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a great community. The Facebook groups, 986 forum, Ren list, it's great if you want more information. So yeah, I'm hoping with the Instagram, I can help someone out. If they're trying to do some work on their own car, they can see that it's possible and dive into it. Yep.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jeff.
Yep. Thank you, Michael.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That's Jeff coming in from San Diego. This is Owner Stories number 28. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.